Originally, we were going to have a limited palette, meaning we were going to have all of the garments kind of out of colors that really went together the whole book. And I'm glad we moved away from that because it gave us more versatility. But during the time that I was concepting that out, I picked up maybe 24 balls of yarn. This is the right color dusty purple, gotta remember that. This is the right color spring green, gotta remember that. And so I had these colors that even all went well together. What am I gonna do? Ripple blanket. And what do you have when you make a ripple blanket? Ends. Too little to do another row, too much to throw away because it was a $15 ball of alpaca. You know, like, what are you going to do with it? So then I had this pile of growing ends. And so then I started making granny squares. And I was like, oh, more relaxing. Instant gratification. And I actually had some of them. But, you know, like, and not only that, but like the ripple blanket, fine. The ripple blanket was my therapy during a particularly stressful time in my life, and I'll always remember that. But the granny squares are like a scrapbook of my yarn life. And again, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about my own color preferences, pulling out, you know, I forced myself to use whatever ball it was that my hand touched first. But in this, I can tell you that this yarn, this brown yarn, was for a beanie I made for that first book I did with Cecily Kime, feverishly stitching. This yarn, this fuzzy yarn, was the hand-spun Angora yarn I bought at my first fiber festival with my mom. It was really fun. You know, and I can kind of go through and say, this was the yarn that I used for my first yarn spotlight in the spring 2007 issue of Interweave Crochet. And I can go through it, and I'll always have that. And I'm not, you know, I would love to say I journal about my projects. I write down who I made it for, when I started it, how many balls of yarn I used, what I did to modify it, stick in a, you know, the ball band, take a photo, and keep it forever and ever more, so that, you know, decades from now I can look back and say, oh, I remember when I did that. Yeah, but I don't. Instead, I have a pile of yarn, and now I can say, this is like my scrapbook of yarn. And eventually, decades from now, I'll have an Afghan, and it'll, you know, it'll kind of look like this. And I can say, this is the yarn that ended up becoming Robin Chichula's cover sweater from the Crochet Me book. And this is Mission, the first time I ever touched Mission Falls cotton. And I remember that. And this green yarn was yarn that I bought off eBay when I first started knitting, and it was really scratchy, and I never knew what to do with it. So now I'm finally doing something with it. And it's in such a small quantity that it won't bug me that it's so scratchy. So all of those things, embracing the granny square, economical, not using anything else. And so here I am now contradicting myself. The granny square can come back because crochet is getting more attention, and it's okay. And we've got other stuff. We also...
Go, Granny, go.
Go, Granny, go. Yeah!